exactly what they want to hear. But you write all that stuff down on that wall, what are you going to do with that stuff? That's paper. It gets down in the trash eventually. Right? I'm not saying- I mean, look. I mean, like, this is being completely serious.
I got you. No,
Look,
I'm
you're
listening.
saying that we're not standing up for, like, the deaf community. That's what you pretty much just said. Okay, whenever I forgot who's come up here and said it, they said that something about you guys not responding to them, and then you flipped it around and said that the deaf community wasn't actually going up because they had that 180 days or whatever. I don't know much about this stuff.
No. I said you need to contact us. I didn't say that they shouldn't. They need to let us know.
I never said that they said they should. Okay.
Okay.
Listen, let me talk,
Okay.
and then you can talk.
Certainly.
Okay? Listen, there is people in here that want to have a voice, but it's people like this commission that is restricting them from that voice. They're trying to make complaints.
Can you give me an idea why, of what?
Okay, say with like an everyday situation. Somebody goes to the emergency room. This has been brought up several times today. Somebody goes to the emergency room. They request an interpreter, and the hospital says no. They don't have any reason why. They don't have any reason to tell us why they don't have an interpreter. And my parents, they fight for it all the time. They're like, hey, why can't we get an interpreter? Why can't we get an interpreter? So it's not the deaf community's fault for being uneducated. They're educated about this. It's just that it's not a hospital's fault. It's not the association's fault. I'm not saying it's the commission's fault completely because I'm not educated on this at all, and I don't even know why I got up here. But the thing is you guys need to understand that, well, how would you feel if you had no sign language, like no knowledge of sign language or anything, and you walked into a room full of deaf people? How would you feel?
I only wanted to shake your hand only because it's people like you that stand up to say what you feel that makes a difference. And I applaud you for that. I think it's wonderful that you're saying, are you being responsive? And what you did was tasked me to say, what am I doing with that on the paper? And that's a good question. What are we going to do? And the answer to some of that is to come here, to be visible, to be here for 4 or 5 days out of the month, and say, okay, what's happening? To talk to the hospitals, be present, and that's what I'm putting in place. In hopes to answer some of these questions. But now you brought up something else, and that is, who is responsible? Because the deaf individual doesn't understand. I understand that. My parents are deaf. My brother's deaf. My sister's deaf. I fought this fight all the time. When I was your age, I was fighting it like you. I understand what you feel. I'm not here because of ignorance. I know the fight, and I understand what you're saying. And who's responsible? We all are. The hospitals do know the law. The hospitals know they have to.
Yes,
They know it. They know it.
But there's people like Marsha. She's an attorney, and she goes everywhere and she fights for this stuff. But it seems like nothing is being done at all. She goes around and she fights for stuff like this all the time. And like I was saying, what are you going to do with this list? She comes in here and she fights for this stuff all the time. But it seems like nobody's doing anything about it. And I'm not saying it's a waste of your time coming down here and doing this. It's a waste of our time for having to come in here and then listen to you talk, and then you not do nothing about it. So could you explain deeper what you were going to do about this? Because that's the point that's not getting across. Because you're not explaining exactly what you're going to do about the stuff that's on this list.
Okay.
You're saying you want the deaf people to be more educated. Educate them.
Okay.
Don't just stand here and explain something that's just a bunch of nonsense.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
It's not
That's
funny.
it.
I mean, there's
No,
not like either,
you
but,
know why? You know why? I mean, you know.
Leave it. Okay. His question is to me is he's tasking me with what are we going to do? Okay. He's a young man. He said what he feels and he's passionate, and I can respect that 100%. What I want you to make sure you do understand is, I understand it. I've been in your shoes. I know it. I was raised in it. And I'm not just an ignorant person that's coming from the outside. Please understand that. The second thing is, I knew some of these issues before I got here. And what Dodie told me was, people are telling you that they don't see you. I said, you are right. you are right. The state of Kentucky is huge. Your issues here are not single. Your issues here are also in Western Kentucky, Northern Kentucky. You know, they're all over. We have 14 people.
Why are they still issues if they're all over Kentucky? If there's so many.
They're all over the United States.
Why are there still issues?
Because people want to challenge the law and not provide interpreters that cost $50, $60, $30, $40, $50, $60 an hour. Because it's a cost, because of business. I can't answer why it's not happening. There is no straight answer to that. You have the National Association for the Deaf that's fighting this every day. This is a worldwide issue. It is not just Kentucky. It is not just USA.
I know that.
It's worldwide, and there's no direct answer to that. You can only take it issue by issue. So when Dodie told me that, and I sat down and I said, okay, Dodie, you're absolutely right. We're not being visible. What we're doing is we're behind the curtain. Believe me, we're working hard, but we're behind that curtain and you don't see it. I put out vlogs and I do this and I do that, but you can't see behind the curtain. I said, okay, there's a problem. I took it to the staff and I took it to the board. I said, there's a problem. They can't see behind the curtain. What am I going to do? All right, what we're going to do is we're going to be here. And we're going to listen, and we're going to talk to the hospitals in person. And we're going to take the cases that you can bring to me and go to the hospitals. And we're going to try to stand next to the attorney and say, look, you said she's all over the place, pushing. She's getting nowhere. Okay then, let's work together. Let's get somewhere. Let's go to the hospitals with a case and say, this is a case that needs to be filed, and let's file. But the understanding the problem that I'm having is 180 days. So I have to hear these cases. I have to be here to hear them. I have to bring it in. I have to file a complaint with you. I can't file a complaint. The law doesn't permit me to file a complaint. You have to file the complaint. Do you know how hard it is for a deaf person to figure it out and file a complaint? That's horrible, horrible. So what am I going to do with insurance companies? I'm going to make some phone calls. We'll find out what is your new rule? What is this about, and how do you select interpreters? And do you understand we have licensure law? Do you go through an agency? What are you doing? I don't understand that yet. I'll try to. Trusting of interpreters, that's an issue. If it's not here, it's elsewhere. All over the place, there's a big disconnect between deaf and hard of hearing and interpreters. Huge. There's a problem. They don't trust each other, and they're angry about what the interpreters are charging because now agencies are saying no. Companies are saying no. California's fees are high. Texas fees are high for an interpreter. Kentucky, some of the interpreters are charging themselves out of the business. So when a doctor says to me, and a doctor has no, for the ADA, they can say undue burden. Doctor has no undue burden with finances. They make a lot of money. But when Medicare gives them, and the huge number of their patients is Medicare, and when a person comes into the office, when they see that person, when a person without Medicare comes in, they pay $150. Medicare, they pay them $30. So most of all of their cases is Medicare, and they get $30 a visit. 1, 2, 3, 4 of those people are deaf. They have to have interpreters that charge $60 an hour, and they get $30. So they've lost money on that person, and they go, but I say, too bad. Fight the law, not me. Fight the law, not me. You still have to do it. At the same time, they're going, you've got to be kidding me. You go fight Medicare. So now apparently someone did fight Medicare because Medicare said, okay, we'll pay for the interpreters, but where's that coming from? So I've got to find out. I'm going to do something about that. VRI is an issue. We have been fighting it. I've had meetings and meetings with hospital conglomerations. And we are discussing the issue of VRI. Not getting the response from the commission. Well, I'm gonna find out what's happening there, and I'm going to hope that we will be more visible and we'll get more of a response. Anthony?
Well, you mentioned that we have to file a complaint within the 180 days, right? So I see a number of people who, as far as trying to write that down, it has to be written, and they say, well, it has to be referred to the commission. Well, it's kind of like, what do you mean it has to be referred to the commission? So, if we're having difficulty contacting you, but we have to file it within 180 days, then that becomes a double issue.
I've heard it more than once and twice, 3 times, that the commission is not easily contacted. I will find out, I will have a meeting with the staff and say, where are we missing? Maybe you all don't have the internet, you can't send a web form. Maybe that's not the only way. Do you call VRS and we can't answer? Do you leave a message? Every phone call, every request is a request in our database that sends, yes, we have recording. Yes, our VRS is recorded. And every request, they have to fill out a request form, all staff. That request form is entered into the database, which you have to do something. You have to do something. It can't be ignored. It can't be lost. You have to do something. So we're missing something. That's an issue. And I'll bring it back to the staff and we will investigate that. That's there. But the issue is too, 180 days with human rights, and I feel that more hospitals need to be filed the suit. Jewish Hospital and Kentucky One Hospital conglomerate was sued. They're wonderful with their interpreters. Baptist was sued, they're doing better. They have their own coordinator now.
I'm probably going to be tired of me coming up on the stage. Now, the hospitals here, we tried to negotiate with them, and they always say, well, it's headquarters. Oh, it's the Louisville office. So how do we get through to them here at the local level? They always blame Louisville.
We can also go to headquarters in Colorado. We can, because we have NAD as well.
Great. I went to the meeting with the Kentucky Health One. And so we had a number of meetings where we expressed our concerns. And so you put your foot down and they said, well, we're working with the agency, and said, if indeed you hire someone who is working here with this one particular person, it's not against the commission, I'm just letting you know what happened. And during that meeting, this person who was advocating for agencies in the Lexington area, they didn't say anything about Louisville, they just said in Lexington, if deaf individuals here can make the appointment and then go to, have the same interpreter go to all of those appointments, but unfortunately, what if an emergency happens and that interpreter is pulled into the emergency? They'll hold up or cancel or postpone that meeting or that appointment so that they can go and take care of the emergency. Remember when we went to the pizza restaurant and they were explaining all those processes? Remember, all of us were like, what? What the heck? So I'm just letting you know what's going on. We don't want to see that set up at all. We don't want that to happen. If they hire an internal interpreter, and that internal interpreter has to go to various places within the hospital, that's fine, but they can't hold up any other appointments because they don't have an interpreter available. It is against the law, period. They can't even say it. Well, so now you know what's going on. The second issue that we got, Virginia, was that Kentucky One. It's whoever's in charge of their interpreters within Kentucky One Hospital. I don't think anyone's ever told me that. Is that true? Yeah. It's Dot, what's her last name? Dot? Kerr? Dot? Yeah, Kerr, Kerr. Let me just be clear. If there are interpreters, now if there's an emergency come up, they will go to the emergency room to handle that. They said, well, we only have one employee under them. But now the question I've got is, do they call to get an additional interpreter to come while they're handling that emergency? She didn't mention how they handle it. So you need to ask them. Did any of you all ask that question? Well, if, for example, we've got an interpreter who's taking care of the hospital setting, and then they've got a call to go down to the emergency room, have they called a second interpreter? Virginia says, well,
We
let's
need to clarify. If their on-staff interpreter is called to an emergency, and the other assignment that's not an emergency is on hold, do they call for an outside interpreter to fill that on hold assignment?
And we'll find out. I understand totally what you're saying, Dodie, that, if you pull the one interpreter that has to cover the emergency, I understand that. So we're like, it's not working. But we don't want our appointment postponed because an emergency came up. Now, of course, the person that's in the emergency room needs to go and be taken care of, but they need to have a mechanism where they can call and say, I need to have a backup interpreter to come in. So we can advocate for that. And Dodie says, someone in the audience wants to add something. She was actually there, so. Do I have to stand on stage? Well, you're tall and everybody can see you, so I'm not worried about that. We went to UK Hospital, I had an eye exam. We went to the hospital because we had an eye exam. And we had to wait for an hour and 30 minutes, and I was like, what's happening? The interpreter's not here, they're on their way. So after waiting for an hour and a half, finally the interpreter came in, and we went into the office, and so I got my eye test, and when I was done, they changed interpreters in the middle of the exam, and so that threw me off as well. I'm like, so what's happening now? Did you ask them why? Well, they said traffic was heavy, I couldn't get here in time, and they just said they had a heavy traffic situation. So that's part of the problem with professional conduct. Okay, so that's an issue there. Yes, another comment? Often people, I'm one of them, we feel like we don't have a voice. We feel like we're being oppressed by the interpreting group. They said, well, that's the reason why I was late. So there's too much oppression. So my daughter and I, we almost lost my daughter because of the interpreter situation. There wasn't enough information. We already asked them that they please would honor my request for a specific interpreter. 3 weeks later, I realized that we needed to have an interpreter in the ICU. We couldn't get an interpreter, and because the interpreter says, well, I can't hear it well enough, and I was disgusted that they couldn't hear well enough to tell me what was going on. And so they were waiting for information. Do you want to have different services provided, a trach and the like? And so they finally got someone to show up, and so every morning the doctor was doing their rounds, and so when the interpreter would come in and say, please go ahead and leave, and so we would all get confused. It's like, wait a minute, we've already told them what we needed. In my position where I understood that I did ask why, they still refused me. I wanted to get a different interpreter, and what I realized now when this happened was that they had to get someone of authority to come in that could give us permission. I felt like I could not fight for what I needed to do. I felt like I needed to sue. You're saying 180 days. It should be regardless of, there should be a time limit on that. We should be able to file if it's an ongoing situation. We're not empowered. If another person was helping us, we should have someone to say, would you like some help? Have someone within the hospital say, can I help you in some way? Dodie, and you're concentrating on your daughter's health and getting better, so your concentration was on her health and not on filing a suit. You're right. I mean, my complaint was that while I didn't have, we have one interpreter and 3 people talking one moment. So while I'm concentrating on my daughter getting better, my thoughts were not on a 180-day time limit. My thoughts are on getting my family better. Now, my point was that I've always had consistently the same interpreter, and so now we've got a new interpreter coordinator, and so, well, I'm a qualified individual, and now I'm going to be interpreting for you, or I want to say, well, and this person's saying, I'm well qualified to do the job, but I've always used this interpreter for my interpreting assignments. And so they know my history, I've used them for years, they know my background, and so we've got a new interpreter coming in, they don't know my background, and so I have to repeat everything all over again, with the issues all over again. I would prefer that we have continuity in our interpreting services so that I can say I have an interpreter preference and so that we can get that person in. The new person that we're bringing in doesn't know me, and I feel like that they're overriding my need. I'm cheaper, interpreters are expensive and the like, and I'm like, that's not the point. I need continuity in the interpreting services that I'm getting. And that was a waste of time as well, waiting for another interpreter to come in that met their agency needs instead of getting one that was local. We have a number of people wanting to speak, so I'll have them come up individually. I've seen my family doctor, I have a preferred interpreter that I've used over the years. And now that we've come under Kentucky One, I know that there are a number of changes. They have contracts with various interpreters. And why must we have contracts with Kentucky One? I'm frustrated. I have the same interpreter that I have a preference for. They're sending interpreters from a distance